Hello everyone, I'm Leroy Harris, Programming Librarian here at the New Ulm Public Library, and I'm very happy to welcome you back to our second annual Stories for the Season. This year we've done a great collaboration together with the State Street Theater, NUCAT, and we're very excited to have the Brown County Historical Society joining us this year to provide us with our reading material. All of the readings that you'll be hearing come from the Brown County Historical Archives. And so they'll include letters, personal remembrances, newspaper clippings, as well as some fun recipes. We hope you enjoy these stories for the season. And this time, I'll be reading to you some accounts from Civil War soldiers related to Christmas. Some are letters, some are diary entries. The first, from 1861, Samuel Bloomer, Company B, 1st Minnesota Infantry Regiment, wrote in his diary while on the picket duty on the Potomac River. December 25th, 1861. This morning dawned very pleasant, and the whole day, but it was a very dull Christmas to us. Last night, our sutler had a lot of goods come, with all kinds of marks on them. Some were marked knives and forks, boot blacking, pepper, etc. But our colonel smelt a rat and had the wagon taken up to the guardhouse, and this morning had the boxes opened, and lo and behold, they contained choice whiskey and brandy, which to his surprise were taken up to Poolsville to the hospital department to be used in that institution. During the day, 2 or 3 kegs of beer were got, and some boys began to feel rather lightheaded. Had no drills, nor even dress parade. I suppose the reason was it was Christmas, and it didn't come but one in a year. I, for one, wish that we had Christmas every day on the drilling account. Not because we had such a good time, for it was the dullest Christmas that ever I spent in all my life, and hope I never shall again. Being a soldier is not like being at home on that day. The boys in my mess got a lot of oysters and good fresh milk and made a good soup of them, but I had to look on and see them go in right, as I am no oyster eater. I could not stand it to look on, so I pitched in and eat a lot of bread and molasses for a substitute of the oysters. Newt Nelson, who served as governor and senator for Minnesota, wrote about 3 Christmas days he spent in the Union Army. Sundays and Christmas days are not much different from other days in respect to military routine and military duties, especially if not confined to a permanent camp. On the march, in bivouac, in skirmish or battle, no heed is given to the character of the day. And even in a transient or permanent camp, there is usually no change in food or other incidentals, except as eked out by the soldier's own scanty means. 3 Christmas days have I passed in the Army as an enlisted man. They have been strange and unusual holidays to me, not indeed like those at home, but not entirely unhappy. They have had a sobering effect on a wild, wayward, and enthusiastic boy. The first Christmas we spent in Baltimore, at Patterson's Park, in old leaky tents with straw on the ground for beds, with a scarcity of fuel, money, and with rather poor Army rations. It would have been a very dull and dreary Christmas for us if it had not been for the kindness of Mr. Leach, a strong Union man of Scotch descent, who resided a short distance from our camp and had often visited us. He invited our entire company, B from the 4th Wisconsin, to his home for a Christmas dinner. He gave us a fine Christmas turkey dinner. After dinner, his wife and daughters sang and played on the piano many fine national and patriotic songs. Some of our boys joined in the singing and were all greatly cheered and enthused. It expelled the lingerings of homesickness and turned our thoughts to our work of saving and preserving the Union. The next Christmas was spent in Baton Rouge, capital of Louisiana. It was a sad, dull, and dragging day, only relieved by a very badly cooked dinner of geese supplemented with Army rations of the usual kind with black coffee in large tin cups. To make it specially discouraging and disagreeable to me, I had been on picket duty the night before, was drowsy and sleepy with a bad headache. A quart of the black coffee revived me and in part dispelled the headache. This Christmas, 1863, has not been quite so barren and lonesome as the last one, though inferior to the Baltimore Christmas in many respects. The breakfast was of the usual Army kind: bread, fried salt pork, and an ample supply of black coffee made of yellow Mississippi water. At this time, I was a corporal, stationed as an orderly at regimental headquarters. And in consequence, I was invited by the quartermaster to partake in a dinner, which he gave to some of his friends at headquarters. We had roast goose and turkey, hot biscuits and butter, potatoes, cookies, sugar loaf cake, and coffee with sugar and condensed milk. A most wonderful dinner for us soldiers in those days. Some had liquors and cigars, but I neither tasted the liquor nor touched the cigars, and I was all the better for it. William Bircher was a drummer in the 2nd Minnesota Infantry Regiment, and he spent Christmas of 1864 near Savannah, Georgia. December 24th. As rations were yet very scarce, we were informed that a short distance below Savannah were several large oyster beds. A detail of men and 2 teams were sent down to see if it was possible to procure enough for a Christmas dinner for the regiment. On their return, we found they had succeeded in filling 1 wagon box, but they were of a very inferior quality. The natives called them the cluster oyster. There were 2 to 5 in one bunch and hard to get out. So our Christmas dinner did not consist of turkey with oyster filling with cranberry sauce. What a glorious campfire we had that Christmas Eve of 1864. It makes me rub my hands together to think of it. The nights were getting cold and frosty, so that it was impossible to sleep under our little shelter tents with comfort. And so half the night was spent around the blazing fires in front of our tents. I always took care that there should be a blazing good fire for our little squad anyhow. Hickory and white oak saplings were my favorites, and I had them piled up as high as my head on wooden fire dogs. What a glorious crackle we had by midnight. We could go out to the fire at any time of night we pleased, and we were pretty sure to go out 3 or 4 times a night, for it was too cold to sleep in the tent more than an hour at a stretch. And we would always find half a dozen of the boys sitting about the fire logs, smoking their pipes, telling yards, or singing snatches of old songs. It looked quite poetical in the retrospect, but I fear it was sometimes prosy enough in the reality. It was Christmas Eve, and here we were with no protection but our little shelter tents, pitched on the hard frozen ground. It was hard to be homeless at this merry season of the year when folks up north were having such happy times, wasn't it? But it was wonderful how elastic the spirits of our soldiers were, and how jolly they could be under the most adverse circumstances. Thomas Christie enlisted with his brother in the 1st Battery of the Minnesota Light Artillery, and he wrote to his father, James Christie, from Vicksburg, Mississippi in 1863. We were all busy these days making fireplaces and chimneys in our tents, for the weather is getting cold. I have been more than usually busy the past week, making out muster-out rolls, each of them 3 feet long, in quintuplicate, muster-in rolls in quadruplicate, descriptive lists, discharge papers, clothing accounts, etc., etc. Everything about our re-enlistment has to be done right, or it might as well not be done at all. There is an immense amount of writing required about each man. Yesterday, being Christmas, some of us had a very nice dinner together in honor of the day, Southwick being the cook. Just think of it. We had oysters, soda crackers, bread and butter, sardines, raspberry sauce, oranges, and apples. You may imagine how we enjoyed the feast. And you may imagine also how we talked about our friends in the north and many a bygone Christmas.